Data instant.
Alright folks, SQL has different types of commands, and each type serves a different purpose. In today's video, we're going to talk about DML, which stands for Data Manipulation Language. DML includes three commands: insert, update, and delete. We use them to add data to a table, change the existing data, or remove data from a table. Now keep in mind that DML is different from DDL. With DDL, we work with objects like databases, tables, and columns. And by the way, I have another video for DDL, feel free to refer to it. But with DML, we only deal with rows and cells. We don't change the structure of the table itself. I'll also cover two important commands from the TCL category: commit and rollback. I'm including them here because whenever we use DML or DDL, there is always a risk of making mistakes. If we forget to use commit or rollback, we can cause serious irreversible damage. In real companies, you're working with thousands or even millions of rows of valuable data. One wrong command could wipe out everything, and you wouldn't be able to undo it. That's why commit and rollback are so important. So let's jump into the workbench.
Data instant.
If you have other SQL interfaces like Microsoft SQL Server or other types, by the way, that's totally fine. You can use them since the syntax is the same. But if you don't have a SQL Server or interface, I have another video that teaches you how to download and install MySQL Server and Workbench in a few clicks. So feel free to watch that first, have your Workbench ready, and then come back and watch this video. The first thing that we need to do is to turn off auto commit. By default, auto commit is on, which means every change that you make is saved immediately. But in SQL, unlike for example Excel, you cannot just hit Ctrl+Z to undo. Once you commit, it's permanent. So we set auto commit to off, and I'll show you later how to use commit and rollback. So let's do it right now. Set auto commit is equal to off, and that's all you need to do. Let's run it. Okay. On the right side, you'll see what I am planning to do, and on the left side of the screen, you see the code. First, I'm gonna create a database because we need something to work with. Then I'll set it as a default, and then I'll create a table with some columns. So let me first create a database called cells, and then we use cells to make it our default database. If we have multiple databases in our schema and we want to avoid any errors, we just write this line of code to make sure we are using the cells. And then we need to also create the table. So just put create table, if not similar to creating cells, database customers. And then we have to also list the columns that we want to have. The first column is customer ID. This one is important. We want this to be a number, an integer number, and to be unique. So we set it as a primary key, and we want this number to increase automatically by 1 unit. So I put auto increment and primary key as our constraint for this one. But for the rest, we don't need to have any specific constraint. We just mention the data type. First name is just varchar, which is for text, similar last name. And age is a number, the data type is integer, and country is also a string. So let's run and see the results and make sure everything is correct. Perfect. Right now we have a table as expected, and it's empty because we haven't inserted anything into it yet. So let's insert some data. I'm gonna add these two rows to our table, John and Sophia. Insert into table name. And then we list the values in the same order as when we created the table. Same order should be followed here. The first is customer ID, and then first name, then last name, and age and country at the end. And when we have multiple rows, we kind of group each row in one bracket and put a comma to go to the next row. This is the way that we do it. And let's see the results. Let me run this. Perfect. You can see we have two rows as expected for John and Sophia. Okay. One thing to remember is that in real world databases, you don't usually need to provide the primary key if it is auto incremented. SQL will generate it for us. And if we are not sure which column is the primary key, we can simply type describe customers to check. So let me show what I mean. First, let me show you how to insert a new row to our table, but this time we don't know what is the latest primary key. So we just put default and let the computer decide or assign the ID. find out the ID, which is the latest available number, and the rest of the data. As you see, it's here it shows default. Unlike the previous one, we didn't mention any number. And if you don't know what the primary key is, there is a way to do that. Before I run it, I just want to show you how to find the primary key. You just type describe customers and it gives you the information that you need. As you see, customer ID is our primary key and it is auto incremented. So you know that you have to put default for this one. So let's run and see what we have. Perfect. You have the third column, like what we wanted to have here. Okay, next I'm gonna add a new row, but this time I don't want to include all the columns. I just want to include 2 columns. Insert into customers. This time it's a little bit different from previous ones. In the previous ones, we wanted to include or populate all the columns. So we really didn't need to put anything. Just when we say into customers, it means everything in customers table. But if you want only specific columns from customers table, we have to specify it this way. So last name and first name, and I intentionally put last name at the beginning and first name after that to show you that here doesn't matter which columns you put first and which after that, as long as your values are following the same order. So last name is Chen and first name is Lin. Let me run this. Awesome. You can see the first name and last name have been populated, but age and country are no. Now let me show you how to update the table. For example, here, Mr. Chen, his age and country is not populated and we want, it's currently null. I want to populate that with the correct data. So in order to do that, we just type update customers and set age to 54 and country to China. And we also need to let the computer know this update is for which client. You might say, okay, it's for Chen, so we put where last name is Chen. Theoretically, it's correct, but practically, it's a very, very bad practice. First of all, usually SQL doesn't let you run this code because by default, SQL is on a safe mode and it prevents you from running this code when there is no identifier under where condition. So let me explain why. First of all, you always need to have where condition. If you don't put a where condition and run this with safe mode off, it will cause a big problem because it's going to update all the columns in your table. The age column is going to be 54 for all the columns and the country is going to be China for all the columns. So it ruins everything. But even if you put where condition here, but don't use the right column for filter, it also can be very problematic because in real world, we have a table of millions of rows. And this way, you are updating the age and country of all the Chens, whoever that his last name or her last name is Chen, the age is going to be 54 and country China, which can be different countries, different ages. And it's going to be very problematic. So you won't be able to run this because we are in a safe mode, but sometimes people turn the safe mode off and it will run and cause that problem. But here you can see that it cannot be done. So the best way that safe mode accept that is to use an identifier, the primary key that I told you in the beginning of the video that you have to use that as the primary key. So if I put customer ID is 4, okay, let's make sure everything is correct. Let me run this. Awesome, you can see that it has been reflected as expected. Remember though, nothing is committed yet because auto commit is off. At some point, you'll need to run commit to save the changes permanently. Until then, you still can roll back. Right now, we double check, triple check, and confirm everything is correct. Then we can save everything to be reflected in our database. To do that, we just put commit and we save all the changes to our table. Now I'm going to show you how to delete a row from your table. For example, let's say we want to delete customer ID number 2 from our table. In order to do that, we type delete from table name, and we also need to specify which row we want to delete. Always similar to update, we use the identifier, which is our primary key, and we specify the row that we want to delete. I put 3, pretending that I made a typo, and I want to show you something. So I made that mistake and deleted that row that I didn't want to delete. So if I run this, you can see row number 3 is gone. Oops. But the good news is that we already had our auto commit off. So this change has not been committed or saved in our database. So we can roll it back to the previous state. And to do that, we just put rollback. If I run this, it will go up until our last commit. So if I run this and see the results, you can see number 3 is back. So we kind of undid the change that we made. Okay, let's delete the correct row, second customer, and be careful to not make a typo. And let's run the final check. Perfect. Customer number 2 is gone. And that's it. Congratulations. You have learned DML commands and the essential TCL commands, commit and rollback. And I hope to see you in the next videos.